What's up guys, my name's Brandon and today I'm going to be showing you more than 100 new features and changes included in the new iOS 17 update. And keep in mind, this is just beta 1. There are going to be more new features and changes. So if you want to find out about all of those new changes before your friends, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. Alright, so we're going to start off on the lock screen, and throughout this video we're going to have iOS 16 on the left, iOS 17 beta 1 over here on the right. So the first thing I want to talk about on the lock screen is that we can now customize the font weight. So you can see now we have this little slider where you can customize the weight of the font. So you can have it really thin or you can make it really thick. Whereas before we did not have that option in iOS 16. Also, if we swipe over to the duotone, you will see that we have a color palette at the bottom without having to go into the three dots. We had to go in there before and then go to style color. It now shows up in a better way. And the same with color wash. We have that same slightly tweaked interface. And then when you go to add a new wallpaper, we have a few new ones here. So under weather and astronomy, before it ended at moon detail and then it went to the solar system, but now we have some new ones. So if we swipe over, we have Mars, we have Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, in addition to all of the other ones that we had before. And there's a new collection for kaleidoscopes, so you can see these different kaleidoscope styles, and there's also flowers. So if we go over a little bit, we have these flower styles as well to choose from. And then of course iOS 17 does come with a brand new wallpaper which looks like this. I think it looks pretty slick, and if you go ahead and add that to your lock screen, it does also have a dark mode. So if we go ahead and put our phone in dark mode, you will see that the wallpaper changes on the lock screen and on the home screen based on what mode our device is in. And speaking of the lock screen, I need to show you one of the headlining features in iOS 17, and that is standby mode. And this turns your iPhone essentially into a home hub. So what you need to do to enable this is lock your device, put it on a MagSafe charging stand or just connect it to a charger, and then flip it into landscape mode while it's charged and in the locked state. And you will see that sometimes it's a little bit slow because we are on a beta, but it will go ahead and put you into an interface that kind of represents a home hub like you would see on a kitchen counter or bedside. And what's awesome here is that these widgets are fully customizable. So we have 3 different pages. So this first page, we can go between our different widgets right here on both sides. And if you tap and hold, you get an option that's very similar to what we see on the home screen, where we have the ability to smart rotate. We have widget suggestions, and you could add different widgets here as well, like batteries, books, you even have third-party ones, and even live activities can show up here on this standby mode. So let's go out of here, and we're going to go to the next page where it shows like an image, and it will show the date that it was taken down in the bottom right. And then the final page is this clock, which again, we can choose between different styles for the clock. And if you tap and hold, you can change like the color, and you can change all type of things about that clock and the way that it looks. And this interface also has a night mode where if you turn the lights out, everything turns red, so it's easier on your eyes. And you also have motion to wake that up if you would like to wake it up without touching your device. And one of my favorite features about standby mode is how Siri results pop up on this display. So let me just show you what I mean. Siri, what's the weather right now? Look how cool that interface is. It's like you can see it from a good ways away, and it's a completely new interface that we don't see anywhere else on iOS. Siri, set a timer for 2 minutes. And again, we get an interface that is really unique that we don't see anywhere else on iOS, and it's something you can see from a good distance away. I can see this being very useful in the kitchen, for example. And then if we head into our settings, we do have a standby section here in settings now with a kill switch, always on. So this does work for non-always on display devices. It just does not stay on like the always on displays do. And then we have night mode, which I talked about earlier, where you can turn that on or off. And you also have motion to wake. You can turn that off if you would like. And I just set a timer, and that reminded me that we have a new feature here in iOS 17 where we can set multiple timers. I know it's 2023. We should not have had to wait this long, but if you go into your timer section right here inside of the clock application, you will notice a couple of things. First off, we have this recents section down here. So we have a reset timer, so you can easily restart timers that you've done recently. We also have labels that you could add right here, whereas before, if we started a timer, you couldn't really add a label. And then most importantly, of course, we can start multiple timers at the same time. So you can see all of these timers are running at the same time. They show up in the dynamic island and also as a live activity on the lock screen. So if you tap right there, you have all of these timers going at the same time. finally. And it's real easy to delete these as well. Just swipe all the way over and it deletes those timers. If you have an Apple Watch paired to your iPhone, in the control center, you will see that we have a brand new toggle for Ping My Watch. So if you lose your watch and you want to ping it, you can now do that straight from a control center toggle. So go ahead and try that and you will hear the ping come from the watch. And also in the control center, we have a new look in the now playing platter. So you can see that the text has been moved down and the controls for play pause are now closer to the song text, and also the AirPlay icon up in the top right is larger and easier to press, and it also has a filled in design, whereas before it was not filled in around the glyph icon. Now, one of the big new features in iOS 17 is interactive widgets. So finally, we now have fully interactive widgets on the iPhone. So for music, for example, you can see on the left, that's what it looked like. Of course, you guys all know, but now in iOS 17, we have the ability to actually perform actions from the widget without going into the application itself. So if I tap play right here, it will start playing that song and I can pause it just like so. We also have this for podcasts. We have this for home. So if I want to turn my lights on or off, or open my shades, or change the temperature in my house, I can do that by just simply tapping on these shortcuts. You even have it for contacts, where you can easily call somebody or text somebody from the contact. And by the way, for the contacts widget, if you tap and hold and then go to edit widget, you can choose a new contact, and you could also choose a different phone number or Apple ID for when you call or text them. Siri has gotten smarter in iOS 17. I know it's hard to believe, but now Siri is not only better in terms of what you actually, say. It picks up what you say better. She also responds with more precision. I've noticed that the suggestions throughout iOS are better and more relevant, but also there's no longer a need to say hey before saying Siri. So you can see Siri, set a timer for 2 minutes. And it goes ahead and does that just like so. And it also continues listening. And that is another feature that I've loved, and that is back-to-back requests. So now you can cut off Siri and you can just continue saying, asking Siri to perform certain tasks without having to say Siri every time before asking for that request. Now, if you go into settings here and then go down to Siri, up top, you will see Siri or Hey Siri. And if you tap on that, you can choose to turn on or off the hey before saying Siri, or you can turn that completely off. And one of the biggest things I worried about by turning off the hey is that I thought there would be a lot of false triggers. I thought that every time I said the word Siri, that it would activate and it would trigger, but that has not been the case at all. So the device is listening to what you're saying after Siri, kind of in real time, and it will detect if you're asking Siri to perform an action, or, if you're asking Siri a question or something like that. If you're just saying it in a sentence, it's not going to trigger. So like if I say Siri and then I continue talking, you can see it does not trigger any of those times. In the music application, you will notice that the mini player in the bottom is different. So it's smaller and it's also a little bit more rounded off. It also does not go all the way from edge to edge. It looks a little bit more modern. And also the buttons over here look a little bit darker than they were in iOS 16 as well. And if we go into the actual song itself, and if I go to the album, like on the browse section, you will see that we now have animated cover art on the now playing screen. So now it's not only set to just the album cover. So let me go ahead to a different one here so I can show you what I mean. So here's what I mean. On the now playing screen, we now have animated cover art, and also it looks a little bit different with the gradients. They go down further, and you just get a fully immersive experience in iOS 17 compared to iOS 16. We also finally get crossfade. So if you want your song to fade into the next song with no silence in between tracks, you can now do that if you go into your settings and then go down to music, and you will see an option for crossfade. But just as a warning, when you turn that on, it will crash the music settings and you cannot get that back. So it's probably not going to be fixed until beta 2. So just a heads up. The AirPlay animation is a little bit different. So if we tap on AirPlay in the bottom, you can see that the animation, the little menu starts in the middle on iOS 17, whereas on iOS 16, it started from the bottom and kind of moved up. So slight difference there. SharePlay is now available on CarPlay. So if you have multiple people in a car, you can kind of SharePlay to the head unit, the CarPlay head unit, and play music even if you're not the one who is hooked up or the one that's driving. There's a couple of changes inside of the podcast application. So if you go into a podcast page and then go down to episodes, you will notice that when you start a podcast but you don't finish it, before in iOS 16 it showed 57 minutes left and it had that look, but now we have a new UI for the amount of time left in a podcast in iOS 17. And then also when you finish a podcast, before it just said played, but now we have this little kind of replay button that shows the amount of time and a little button, a little glyph icon that indicates we can replay that by tapping on it. Oh, and there's also a plus next to the date above the title of the podcast episode when you complete that episode. And then when you go to the now playing screen, you will notice a pretty big difference here. So first off, it looks a lot more modern and a lot more clean. I like the look of this. So we have the dominant color from the podcast kind of take over the bottom, and it adjusts the color based on the dominant color of the cover art or, the specific chapter art if you have a podcast that separates it by chapters with images. And then also you will notice that down here is where we had the speed for the podcast in iOS 16, but now in iOS 17, that has moved up and it's next to the play pause and also the rewind or fast forward. And same with the sleep timer. So if you turn on the sleep timer, that is now right next to the control options instead of down at the bottom. So the bottom of podcast is now much more cleaned up than it was on iOS 16. And you'll also notice we have this kind of glow effect on the speed right there. And also if we set the timer, we have that glow effect right there as well, which actually looks pretty cool. Oh, and the queue is also better as well. So if you tap on the queue in the bottom right, you will notice that we have a new animation, and also it shows like nothing playing next. Whereas before it did not even show a queue if you didn't have anything up there. And this is what it looked like if you did have something in the queue. So if I remove that, there was no queue at all. But now in iOS 17, there is a queue with a cool animation, and this whole interface for the queue looks better. We also have a couple of changes for the AirPods. So if I open up my AirPods and both devices are in dark mode, you will see that in iOS 17, we now have a dark mode interface when we connect AirPods for the little pop-up here, and it looks really good. The AirPods Pro 2nd generation get a brand new feature called Adaptive Noise Control, and this is specific for the AirPods Pro 2, and what this does is it kind of combines noise cancellation with transparency mode and kind of uses them on a case-by-case basis as you're doing tasks throughout the day. It will determine if you need more transparency mode or if you need more noise cancellation. It's pretty neat. Also, audio switching is much quicker than it was before in iOS 16. Like when I switch audio from my Mac to my iPhone or vice versa, it is now much quicker than it ever was in iOS 16. You can also now mute yourself very quickly on a phone call by pressing on the stem on the AirPods Pro or by pressing on the digital crown on the AirPods Max. And this is going to allow you to quickly mute and unmute yourself while on a call. And if you go into the actual AirPods settings, you will see some changes here as well. So the noise control section is different. It's more squared off, and we don't have a bunch of white extra space right there. And then also if we go down, you can see we have call controls right here. So answer call and end call is right here. And then Apple called this adaptive transparency in iOS 16, but now it just says loud sound reduction. Reduce loud sounds you are exposed to. So much simpler terms there than what we had before, which could have been quite confusing to some people. And keep in mind, you might need the AirPods beta firmware installed to see some of these new features on your AirPods Pro or AirPods Max. iOS 17 includes a few new changes in the Photos application. So first off, you can see that visual lookup has a change. So before we just had this little eye in the bottom, but now in iOS 17, it shows what object was actually detected with a new glyph icon. And if you tap on that for food, we now have the ability, when you tap on look up food, to see quick recipes for something that is similar to what it detects in the photo. So if you take a picture of somebody's meal while you're out and it looks good and you want to know how to make that when you get back, you can do that with visual lookup, and it's actually pretty accurate. And if you select the subject, you now have the option to look up or add a sticker straight from selecting the subject, and it does the same thing, but this way to kind of get to that area is new. And also adding a sticker is new. You can create your own. You can see I just added that as a sticker. So if I wanted to use that now in messages or anywhere throughout iOS, I can use that fruit bowl as a sticker, and you can see other ones I've created there as well. If we tap on edit, we have a new interface for editing photos. So first off, you can see at the bottom we now have text. So it says adjust, filters, and crop, and we also have a yellow triangle up top versus a yellow circle below on iOS 16. Also in the very top, you will notice that we have a yellow done button up in the top right and a cancel button up in the top left, whereas before they were down here on the bottom, but now they're kind of away from everything and not in the way, and also easier to press. And when you tap on markup right here, for example, we're going to go to markup on both photos. The order of the markup tools has changed at the bottom, and if you tap on the plus, we now have the option to add a sticker. And also, this just looks different. I think the font is different. This is longer. It's not white. It's kind of like an off-white. It kind of matches with the photo. And also the glyph icons are to the right instead of to the left. Oh, and it says add text instead of text, add signature instead of signature, and it shows magnifier and then the shapes, whereas now it just says add shape. And this allows you to add these different shapes. So there are additional options for those shapes as well. And when you add a shape, for example, you have this little 3-dot menu up in the top left of that shape where you can cut, copy, duplicate, share, and delete. And at the bottom, you can be even more precise with this. So if you wanted to change the thickness, for example, or if you wanted to change the opacity, you can change that right there. And then also this green allows you to change the roundness of that button that you just added. So a lot more, controls and a lot more that you can do with shapes and just markup in general in iOS 17. We also now have visual lookup in videos. So if I have a video right here and I want to identify something in that, I can pause it, and at the bottom it shows the glyph icon for what has been detected, and you can tap on that and you can look up exactly what was detected in that video, which for this case, it was right on the money. That is a tabby cat. Apple also says that the People album is now better than it was in iOS 16, and also it includes cats and dogs, which they are a part of your family, so it's nice to see them added in photos under the People section as well. In the Messages application, we now have a new feature called Catch Up that shows you an arrow to take you to the first message that you haven't seen. So for example, if you're in a group chat and 100 messages were sent since the last time you were in there, when you open up that thread, you will now get this little arrow that will take you up to the first message that you missed, and then you can scroll down and catch up with everything in a group chat, for example, which is really nice. I've needed that so many times. We also now get search filters in Messages, so you can search by a specific message thread, and when you go to that thread, for example, you can even break it down by link, by photo, by location, by document. You can see all the messages. You can even get more precise by searching for a specific word in a specific message thread. So like if I search for my name in this message thread, you can see it shows all the messages that match that criteria. If somebody is sharing their location with you via Find My, that location now shows up underneath of their contact photo in Messages. One of the most annoying things to me in iOS 16 was the fact that we had to tap and hold and then press reply to a message. It just took way too long, and I just ended up not using it very often. But now with iOS 17, you can simply swipe over on a text bubble and you can reply quickly to that message. So I will be using this a lot more now that Apple makes it so simple to reply. When you go into a message, you will notice that the bubble is longer and it goes further to the right. Also, the glyph icon for the dictation is filled in, whereas before it was just an outline. And then also on the left, before we had the camera button and the app icon drawer right there, which was very clunky and very messy. Pretty much nobody ever used that. But now in iOS 17, they've simplified this and added this little plus. And if you tap on that, you get this new interface that shows everything in one little menu, but it's also, kind of not obstructing your view while in the application. So also when you swipe up, you have access to all of these other new features and third-party applications here as well. Now, one of the big features and Messages that I think is going to be very useful and potentially save lives is check-in. And this allows you to check in on somebody and make sure that they got home safely. And when you go to use this for the first time, you will get this splash screen here that shows how it works. And it says, let your friend know you've arrived with check-in. And it says iPhone will keep up with your progress. And you also get the option to choose, if you don't arrive, what data is sent back to the person that you sent the check-in to. Do you want them to have limited data, or do you want them to have full data, which includes route traveled and location of your last iPhone unlock, and when your Apple Watch was removed and where it was removed. And your friend is going to be notified when you send the check-in to begin with, when you arrive, and also if you are delayed and do not respond when prompted. And then also, I mentioned this earlier in the photos section, but we do have stickers here as well, where you can create your own sticker from an image, and you can kind of place that on top of these to react to an image. You could also just tap on it to insert that as a text message in that thread. If you're a fan of Memojis, there are a couple of new Memojis. So if we go here and then go to the Memoji section, there are 3 new stickers. So we have Halo, Smirk, and Peekaboo. Something else that I really love in iOS 17 is the new magnifying glass. So you can see the new UI for the magnifying glass is just so nice. So the blue outline actually changes depending on the application that you're in. Like in Notes, it's yellow, and Messages, it's blue, for example. Now, one of the most underrated features in iOS 17 that is going to be majorly useful is the ability to automatically clean up verification codes that are clogging up your messages. So if you go into your settings here and then into passwords, there's a new option up top for password options. If you tap on that, we have a new toggle here under verification codes for clean up automatically. And it says automatically delete verification codes and messages and mail after inserting with autofill. I already know that this is going to be an awesome feature because I cannot stand having to delete those messages all the time inside of messages. So it's nice that they will automatically delete after they're used. iOS 17 also introduces predictive text recommendations that are actually in line and they're not for you to just tap on down here. So for example, I went down to the Mar, and you can see it kind of fills in the blanks there. And if you tap on the space, it will automatically put that in iOS 17. And it can do as many as like 4 words at one time. It's really advanced, and it does also use machine learning, and it detects, how you write. So it gets better the more you type on iOS 17. And then also I will say that autocorrect is far better in iOS 17 as well. So it does use on-device machine learning to correct mistakes with more accuracy than ever before. So if I type something out like fruit, if I wanted to type in fruit, you can see I typed it wrong, but it shows a little blue underline under fruit. And if I don't like that, I can tap on it and revert back to what it was before, the misspelling that I had there. You can see I can change it back if I would like to. But I've noticed that the autocorrect is so much smarter than iOS 16, and this is really just something you're gonna have to use to really understand and grasp it. I didn't even really realize how good it was at first until I was really using the software for several hours, and then I realized that autocorrect was doing a much better job at correcting my bad spelling because I was in a rush. Now here's something new. So this is a new prompt that you might see in iOS 17. So it says, for example, Twitter has been able to access your entire photo library for 6 months. Do you want to continue to allow full access? And it shows how many photos and videos, and you can limit access or allow full access. So it now shows you this prompt even after a device has already been using your data or able to access some of your data. And speaking of privacy, if we go into our settings and go down to privacy and security and then go all the way down to the bottom, you will see that we have a new section here called sensitive content warning. So it says detect nudes and videos before they are viewed on your iPhone and receive guidance to help make a safe choice. So if you go into this, you have the ability to turn that on or off. Now also, if we go into our screen time settings, so if we go to screen time right here, first off, the whole interface is changed here inside of the screen time settings. So we have screen time up top, the glyph icon, along with what screen time actually does. And we also have our menu items broken up into categories. So we have limit usage, communication, restrictions, and then family and screen time passwords, whereas before it said use screen time passcode. Now it just says lock screen time settings. Downtime is now app and website activity. When you go into here, you can see you get a new splash screen that shows what this is and how it works. And just to add on to the previous feature that is also available here in communication safety. So you can see up top, it says check for sensitive photos. Also new in iOS 17 is screen distance. So this is a new toggle that you can turn on to basically give you a notification if you're holding your device too close to your face. So it says to help reduce eye strain and the risk of myopia in children, screen distance will alert you when you hold an iPhone with Face ID too close for an extended period of time. So it recommends keeping it 12 inches away from your eyes. And if it's too close for too long, you will get an alert. If we head into our settings, general iPhone storage, you will see that we have a new layout for iPhone storage. So it shows bigger text up in the top right for how much is being used. And also in the box there, it shows how much space is available. And it also breaks down the categories a little bit better. So it shows podcasts, music, messages, mail, iOS, system data. Just seems like there's more more that is shown right there. And then also when you scroll down, you can now sort this by size, name, or last used date. And if you go all the way down to the bottom, you will notice that it kind of saves space here by not showing everything, but you have the option to show all if you would like. And then also under iOS, it shows the version number in parentheses. Now here is a feature that I feel like is very underrated, and that is the ability to share an AirTag with up to 5 people. So if you go to your AirTag in the Find My application, you will see that we have a new option here for share this AirTag. If you tap on Add Person, this will allow you to add up to 5 people to view that AirTag, and also it will turn off tracking notifications for all of those people. So like for example, if you have 3 different AirTags from 3 different people and 3 bags of luggage while you're on the way to the airport and traveling, you may get alerts that say, hey, an unknown device is tracking you. But if you add, all your family members to your AirTag, not only can they see the location of your luggage, but you also will not get those notifications from them. So I find this to be a very, very useful feature. Now, easily one of the best new features in iOS 17 is NameDrop, which is an epic name, by the way. And this allows you to exchange contact info with AirDrop by simply tapping phones over one another. And it looks like from the demo that your device can even be locked when doing this. And this is going to allow you to exchange contact info without, having to send a text message with their name and they send you a text message back with their name the old school way. So this should be much better for exchanging contact info, but I was not able to get this to work on iOS 17 beta 1. And then also in iOS 17, you're now going to be able to bring your phone close together to initiate a transfer via AirDrop. Now again, this is something I've not been able to get to work, but if I go ahead into here and go to AirDrop, you will notice that we have a new UI, a tweaked UI here, so it shows who you appear as in the bottom now. Another headlining feature in iOS 17 is contact posters, and this allows you to change how you look when you are calling somebody. So let me explain. So if you go into your contacts and go to yourself up top, you will see that we have a new option at the bottom for contact photo and poster. And if you go to that, you can choose if you want to share this automatically with contacts only or always ask. And if you tap on edit right here, you get the ability to choose basically how your incoming call looks to other people. So you can have it just be nothing, you could have it be a memoji, you can have it be a picture of you, you can change all of this. So we're gonna go ahead to create new, and you can see you can choose from photos, memoji, monogram, or from the camera. So we're gonna choose a photo. I'll choose this funny photo of me right here, and you can see you can swipe between different styles. So it kind of cut out my Voodoo Donuts box right there, but this is pretty cool. I mean, if it didn't cut that out, this would be awesome because it would kind of just take me out from the background. It eliminates that background perfectly. So you can see you can change between these different effects. You could also change the colors down at the bottom, and you can change your font color and the size and the thickness of it as well. So if you want it to look like that, that's how it can look. And then once you're ready with it, just go ahead and tap on done and then tap on continue, and you can crop your contact photo, which this is just going to be like what you show up as in the text messages and things like that. So you can go ahead and do that and now update. And now that's what it's going to look like when you are calling somebody. You can also set this up for other contacts before they set theirs up for themselves. So you can see I set one up here as a test. This is how it's going to look on somebody else's phone. So when somebody called me, this is what their contact poster looked like. And when you answer the call, this is what it looks like. So you get the interface that is over top of the image. The image takes up the full screen. Looks much better. It looks more like a FaceTime call than it does an actual phone call, which, by the way, this was for a phone call. This one was for a FaceTime call. And speaking of the contacts application, if you go to a contact and go to edit, there's a brand new field for pronouns. So you can see add pronouns, and this will allow you to choose different pronouns for each contact. And of course, you can do this for yourself as well, and that will transfer when you exchange contact info with somebody else. And speaking of phone calls, one of the great new features in iOS 17 is live voicemail. And what this does is if somebody calls you and you don't answer and they start leaving a voicemail, it will show you, it will transcribe what they're saying on that voicemail in real time. So if you needed to pick up the phone while they were leaving that voicemail, if you needed to call them back right away, you could do that, and it shows everything in real time. Speaking of FaceTime, if you called somebody and they didn't answer or they declined you, you now get this interface. So it says the person you were trying to contact is unavailable, and now you can quickly call again, or you can record a video message. So you can now record a FaceTime video message, and here's what it looks like when you go into there. You record this quick message, it does a countdown for you, and then once you are done, you get the option to retake it or send that to the person as a FaceTime message. A fun little feature in FaceTime is that you can now react with your hands, so you can share a reaction with a gesture. So if you do like a thumbs up, it gives you this thumbs up. If you do a heart, it shows you the heart. You get all these cool 3D augmented reality effects. You just have to turn it on when you're on a FaceTime call. Just swipe down from the top right, and over here on the left for video effects, we have a new section for reactions. And if you tap on the share button up in the top right, you can see that first of all these have labels underneath now. So it shows camera, speaker, mute, share, and end right underneath those icons. But if you tap on the share button right here for SharePlay, before we just had this simple little pop out in iOS 16 with some applications we can use and share my screen up top. But now in iOS 17, it's much more prominent. Share my screen is up top. We have listen and play together and collaborate together right here with different applications as well. And you can now use FaceTime on Apple TV. So you can use your iPhone as a camera and start a call directly from the FaceTime app on Apple TV. Or you can hand off the phone call from your iPhone to your Apple TV, which is pretty neat. And if you're into SharePlay, you can now hold two iPhones together to instantly start a SharePlay session. You don't need to initiate it from the application anymore. AirPlay now uses on-device intelligence to learn your preferences over time. So for example, if I go into music here, pretty much every time I open up music, it asks me if I want to play that music on my HomePods when I use my main device, because it knows I usually play music when I'm in this location on my HomePods. So now AirPlay is getting smarter with on-device intelligence to learn your preferences over time. And later this year, AirPlay is going to be available in many more hotel rooms, and you're going to be able to connect via a QR code, which is going to be awesome. No more bringing your Apple TV to the hotel. You can now just use AirPlay on the hotel TV. Of course, at select hotels, that is, not everyone. In the home application, if we go to my AC, for example, you can see that the interface has been changed, so it looks much cleaner than it did in iOS 16. And also where it said heat, cool, off, auto, all that, we now have a new look for that down there at the bottom as well. Same with these settings. The gear icon has a completely different glyph now in the bottom right. We also have the outline, the filled in outline, whereas before it was just kind of a transparent icon down there. And also it shows office in the middle with the current temperature and humidity all centered, whereas before that was up in the top left and it didn't even show the humidity before. And if we go to our HomePods, if we tap on HomePods, it will show a much more translucent now playing screen than what we saw before. The alarms also look different down here at the bottom, and that same new settings gear icon down in the bottom right. And if we haptic press on those HomePods, it says accessory details. That was what it said before. Now it says accessory settings. So a slight change there. And also it opens up to a new page for settings. It doesn't show the now playing up top. It just shows the settings right away. iOS 17 also includes activity history in the home application. So if you want to see when somebody unlocks the door, opens the garage, things like that, you now get a log with activity history. And the interactive widget for home is awesome. So if you tap and hold right there and go to edit home, you can change from recommended to specific scenes or accessories that you want to show right there. And you can change them straight from the widget. You don't need to go into the actual home application to change these. In the Maps application, we now finally have one of the most requested features, and that is offline maps. So if you go into your maps and tap on your account icon up in the top right, you will see offline maps. And if you tap on that, you can download a suggested map or you can download a new map. And if you tap on download new map, you can choose like an area. So I'll just choose Orlando, Florida, and you can choose where you want to download, this map for offline usage. It will also show how much size that will take up, like how many megabytes this downloaded map will take up. And what's neat about this is that it's not going to be outdated because updates will be downloaded automatically in the future. And iOS 17 also adds EV routing. So if you have an EV, an electric car, you can now see real-time results of how many charging stations are available. And also you get a route that takes into account the amount of times you need to stop to charge. The Safari application gets some new updates in iOS 17. So if we go to the tab view, you can see at the bottom, we have a brand new interface where we can swipe to go between different tab groups and also to go to private browsing. In the middle, we have this right here as well, these 3 lines, which pulls up the tab groups instead of showing how many tabs we have opened only at the bottom. Now, also, you may have noticed that to go into private browsing, you now have to unlock your device. So when you press on unlock, it will ask for your Face ID, Touch ID, or password, and then it will unlock the private browsing. But there's also a couple of other features as well related to private browsing. So now advanced tracking and fingerprint protection is included with private browsing, along with enhanced extension control. And if you go into the Safari settings, we now have profiles. So you can now set profiles to separate data like your favorites, your tab groups, all of that. If you have maybe multiple people who use your device, you can now set up different profiles based on who is using Safari at the time. And you have your favorites and these different settings down here on a per profile basis. Also new in iOS 17, when you tap on clear history and website data, before you just had one option. You could either clear or cancel, but now in iOS 17, you get the ability to choose a time frame. So you can do last hour, today and yesterday, or all history. And then you also have this additional option for close all tabs. And then also in iOS 17, you have autofill verification codes received in mail. So anytime you get a verification code to sign in, like via 2-factor authentication, and you get that code sent to your email, it will now pop up in your, predictive text, your autofill, to insert that code easily. So you don't have to go out of Safari into mail and then back into Safari to paste in that 2-factor authentication code. That now works just like it does with text message verification codes. The search in Safari is also better here in iOS 17. So when you start typing something, you will notice that the results are much more relevant, and you also get some rich results like iOS 16 up there. So search should be improved across the board. Also with Safari, I know we already talked about widgets, but there is a Safari widget now, but unfortunately it's only for the reading list. There are 3 different sizes for the reading list. I wish we had more than just a reading list, but that is cool that we have a widget now for the home screen. If we head into our settings and go to passwords, you'll see that we have a new section here for family passwords where you can share your passwords and passkeys with family. And when you tap on get started, it's going to take you to the splash screen where it shows you can add trusted contacts, choose what to share, and it shows that you're in control. You can remove others from having access to your passwords and passkeys, if you want to at any time. So this is nice, and this is also good if you're very forgetful of your passwords, especially for something important like your Apple account. You can share that in here. And speaking of passwords and signing in, you're now able to securely sign in to your iPhone using a nearby device or an email address or phone number that's listed under your Apple ID account. Now, one of the features that Apple announced early for iOS 17 were some accessibility features, and the big one was personal voice, where it would basically create an AI generated version of your voice. So if we go into our accessibility settings here, you will see that we have that right here under speech, and it says personal voice. Now, when you tap on that and you tap to create a personal voice, it says record yourself, generate your personal voice. iPhone will create and securely store your personal voice, and you can now use that anywhere. And it says communicate with live speech, which lets you type to speak in your own voice in FaceTime, phone, and assistive communication apps. So this feature is absolutely amazing. Now, you do have to do 15 minutes of voice recording, and it is very, very redundant, and it takes a while. Like, it's 15 minutes, but it seems like it takes like 40 minutes. So just beware of that. And also, once you do finish it, you can't really do anything. It takes a long time to actually create your voice. So that is one thing to keep in mind, but this feature is here in iOS 17, and it is a pretty awesome game-changing feature, honestly, for some people. And we also have live speech right here as well. So if you turn that on, and it also says you can triple click the side button to show live speech. You can have your favorite phrases right here, and you could choose the voices. So I'll triple click real quick. So I'll just say, hello, how are you today? And that is another accessibility feature that can be very useful for some people. And then if we go into voiceover, we have detection mode right here. So magnifier can help describe scenes, detect people, doors, and text using the camera. Now the new thing here is point and speak, which makes it easier for people with vision disabilities to interact with physical objects that have text labels, kind of like a microwave, a stove, something like that. So if you open up the magnifier application, and once you open the application, you will get a splash screen for detection mode that shows the new feature point and speak right up top. So you can see you have all these icons over here on the left-hand side. I would assume this is point and speak. Yes, it is.
Parcel, read, slate, TikTok, short, screen time, reminders, photos.
So that is pretty cool. It's pretty accurate. I mean, it is a beta, but it is still pretty accurate. And that feature is, again, going to be a game changer for some people. Now, one thing that Apple really focused on at this event was mental health. And some of those features are in the health application. You will see we have a brand new category called mental well-being. And if you go into that, you will see a completely new section here that kind of monitors things that impact your mental health and your mental well-being, like sleep, how much you exercise, your mindful minutes, how much you use mindfulness. You also have anxiety risk, depression risk, state of mind, and also time and daylight. All of these things can be tracked. So if I go to anxiety risk, I can take a questionnaire to see if I'm at risk or if I have anxiety. Same with depression. And you can do state of mind here, which is also really cool. So this keeps track of how you are feeling and can help you understand your mental well-being. So if you tap on get started, this is going to allow you to log your emotion or your mood. And it says how you're feeling right now and how you felt overall today. You can choose which one. So if I do this, and it says choose how you're feeling right now with a really cool thing. So I'm going to do very pleasant. I'm feeling very pleasant right now. We're going to tap on next. What best describes this feeling? Amazed, amused, brave, calm. I'll just do calm. We'll go to next. And then also, what's having the biggest impact on you? We'll just say that for now. Let's go ahead to done. And then I enabled reminders to log. And you can see we now have a kind of chart showing our state of mind. I only have one day on here, but this will be great to see over time in a graph over the weeks, months, 6 months, and year. So you can see it up top right here as well. And you can always add this to your favorite, so you always see it on your summary right here. So state of mind, a super cool mental health feature that has been added. Now, something else that's been added that is going to be very useful for a lot of people has to do with medication. So if we go into the medication section, and if you have a medication set up in here and you go down to options, we now have a new option in iOS 17 called follow-up reminders. And it says health can send follow-up reminders if you haven't logged a medication 30 minutes after the initial notification. So this could be great for those who forget to take their medicine, even after they've gotten a first reminder. They may put it off and still not take it. So this could help with that. And for those wondering where the journal application is, Apple did announce the journal app for iOS 17, but it's not going to be available until later this year. So by the time iOS 17, the official release is out, that will be out, but for now, it is not released just yet. The reminders application in iOS 17 gets one major feature that I will be using on a pretty weekly basis, I will say. So if you go to add a new list, you will see that we now have list types. So you have standard, and now we have groceries as a list type. And this is awesome. So I'm going to name this groceries. So I have the same list set up on iOS 16 and also here on iOS 17. So you can see a difference already in the UI. Also, it now says new item instead of new reminder, but we're going to add a new item here. So we're going to add a few items and I'm going to show you guys what's new in iOS 17. Okay, so I just typed out my groceries on iOS 16 and you can see nothing special, it's just a list of groceries, but here's how that works in iOS 17, and it's so useful. So if I type in banana and I just hit return, it automatically categorizes that by what the category is, like produce, for example, for banana. So if I type in jelly, it's going to put that under sauces and condiments. If I do chips, it's going to know that that's snacks and candy. If I do, Frosted Flakes, not even the name of the food, but a brand, it's going to know that that is a bread and a cereal. And if I go ahead and type in, let's just say yogurt, it's going to know that that is dairy, eggs, and cheese. And what's cool about this is that once you tap on that, it will not only collapse it, but it will get rid of that. And, you can also collapse these things as well. So if you want to have more space, you can collapse these different categories. And I just find this to be extremely, extremely useful, especially if you use the reminders application to, put down your grocery list, which I highly recommend. It's so much better than using notes or anything like that. And if you want to see everything that you just completed, you can of course go in here and show completed and it will show them right there. So this is awesome. The Notes application also has a few new features that are pretty big. So first off, when it comes to PDFs, this is what PDFs looked like before. You really didn't have anything you could do in the Notes app, but now we have a whole new UI here for Notes and PDFs in Notes. So you can see when you open it up to the full screen where you see all the pages, it looks like that. Whereas before, this is how it looked on iOS 16. But you can also now mark up PDFs. So if you tap on these little three dots right here, you're able to quick look, attachment display, you can change the display. And then also we have the markup down here at the bottom. So if you tap on that and you want to add a signature, you can go ahead and do that right here within Notes, and it puts the signature on the PDF. Now, if I were to do that over here on iOS 16, if I do the same thing, go ahead here, add signature, you will see that it just puts it below the PDF. It doesn't actually put it in the PDF itself. And actually now, since I marked it up, it shows unsupported file format in iOS 16. So iOS 17 is just going to play better and be more useful for PDFs. We also have a couple of new things here. So we have block quotes. So you can see where it says, "This is it." That is a block quote, which looks pretty cool. This is what it looks like on iOS 16. There's really nothing over here. And then also up top, we have the mono styled format. So that is a new format, and you can get to that by tapping on the A's right here. If you go all the way over, we have mono styled. So that is a brand new type of layout. And this is the button for block quotes. So if you want to tap on that, you will have a mono styled format with a block quote. You can do it all in one if you would like to as well. You can also add links to connect related notes. Like if you have a trip itinerary and a list of recommended restaurants, you can now connect those together. In the weather application at night, you will now be able to see a moon, whereas that did not show on iOS 16. Also, if you go down, you will see that we have more data. So we have averages. So right there where UV index used to be, we now have the averages. So today's high versus the average high, and you can see how many degrees it is away from the average. The wind module is much bigger now, and it shows the average speed along with the gust speed, whereas before it just showed the miles per hour of the wind, and that was it. And then adding on to the moon, you can also see we have more details about the moon. You can see the illumination, the moonrise, the next full moon. You can see all of that now from the weather app. Now, if we go into the weather map here, so if you go to this and then tap on the layers up in the top right, we now have a new layer for wind. So you can now see the wind map versus just precipitation, temperature, and air quality. The translate application has a new UI for pretty much every tab. So first off, the main translation page you can see is much different. It's up and down versus side to side. Also, the microphone has been moved from the bottom to the side right there. If we go into the camera tab, this has also been changed. So it now shows English to Spanish down here at the bottom and a mini pop-up, whereas before it was all the way up at the top and it just did not look good. If we go to conversation, this has been changed. It looks more like a text message exchange between two people. It looks much better in my opinion than it did in iOS 16. In the Freeform application, it now turns your drawings into the desired shape. So if I go ahead and draw a square right here and tap and hold on it, you can see it turns it into a square, just like we have in Notes. Apple News Plus subscribers now have access to daily crossword puzzles, and you also have Apple News Plus audio stories that are available in the podcast application. So if you listen to audio stories, you can now access those straight from the podcast app. In the fitness application, if we go to the sharing tab over on the far right, you will see that the glyph icon has changed down there. So it's now two people versus that little weird S that we saw before. Also, the little splash screen here is different as well. And if you're a Fitness Plus user, you now have access to create a workout and meditation schedule based on exactly what you want with custom plans. So you can set up a custom plan, as you can see right here in iOS 17. Also in iOS 17, you're now able to use your previous passcode for 72 hours if you change it and forget it. And we're talking about Apple ID password here. So if your device gets stolen, and somebody resets the password, you can now reuse your previous password. You can use your previous password for up to 72 hours if you forget it or if your device gets stolen. Now, you might have noticed this throughout the video, but the spotlight search also looks a bit different. So it used to look very translucent, but now it's a little bit more opaque. It's a little bit more clear, that is there. And you could also run shortcuts and also system settings from the spotlight search. Like if I search for Wi-Fi, for example, I can turn off the Wi-Fi straight from the Spotlight search now. And same with shortcuts. We've always been able to run shortcuts before, but now they seem to show up more often. And you can see like different parts of a shortcut in the Spotlight search. So Spotlight search and just Siri in general just continue to get better every single year with these new iOS updates. So those are over 100 new features and changes included in iOS 17. If you want to see even more, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. You didn't get this far in the video to not subscribe. So double check, make sure you are subscribed. Otherwise, you won't be notified of the new features in iOS 17 before your friends. And I know you want to be notified before them. So anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, I would appreciate if you gave it a thumbs up. And again, if you haven't hit that subscribe button, now is the time to do so. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.